Hey, what's going on, Clipper fans, Clipper people, Clipper folks? It is me, William Updike of Clips and Dip, just 1/3 of this beautiful triumvirate. Joined as always by Charles Mockler, joined as sometimes by Adam Oslin, who is reportedly over illness. But today, the Clippers are on a streak. They're on a verifiable heater. I think we can all agree to that. So we're going to talk about the Clippers rolling, what we've enjoyed from this streak. As well as just kind of checking on some other stuff. We're also going to talk about Paul George's groin injury, which Adam and I touched on in the post game over at AM 570, but we're going to dig a little deeper, and then we'll also have a Clippers versus Warriors game preview for you. But before we get into it, let's start with Adam. Haven't seen him in a while. What's going on in Ozland? How you doing?
Yeah, sorry for prioritizing my other job, Will, but unfortunately that comes
Coward
first.
behavior. Coward
Well, I
behavior.
knew you guys would have a great guest lined up in Rod, and
Yeah.
he obviously. I'm gonna have a tough time refilling my shoes that he filled and just kicked out the front of, like he was Teen Wolf or something like that.
We can get
He
you
grew into
some
some of those
cement
takes.
for putting those shoes. Yeah, we'll be he put cement in his shoes. We'll be good.
What's the Clippers record since Rod came on? Are they undefeated, I believe? Yeah, that
Something
makes
to it.
sense, right? Yeah.
Must be something to it.
I'm excited for the Rod redemption episode sometime later, maybe on this season, as he
100%.
went not red wedding, but Rod wedding on the podcast with some of the things that he said. Just wild, but it's good. Of
course,
to be back,
receipts.
guys.
The first thing that Adam brings up as soon as he's on the podcast, a receipt from something that happened a week ago. Good to know you're back, buddy. I'm glad you're healthy.
I mean, look, I have to play to my brand, right? That's what the people want. I'm staying on track here, but it is good to be back. In all seriousness, I missed you guys and missed doing this. And I
we
appreciate
missed
you coming on post game, anyways. And
the only reason I gave you so much shit while you were gone is because I was trying to light a fire under you.
To then talk about receipts, to then get slammed for talking about receipts.
Buddy, I'm helping your brand here, okay?
Brand building is always here on Clips and Dip.
Speaking of brand building, Charles told me to mention this up top in the intro. I didn't. I forgot about it. But please subscribe to us over on YouTube. That's at Clippers Podcast. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. And by that, I mean, I think we're like 2/3 of the way there.
We are exactly
but help us in our goal. Let's reach 1K before the end of this season. Maybe before the All-Star break. We'll see. It's just a dream, you know? I'm just a dreamer. Charles, Charles, what about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy we're all back to talk the Clips. I don't know if I should divulge this information, but Adam ran 10 miles earlier today, which I was shocked and impressed by. So
and now
Adam,
I have
happy
this,
you're back with a vengeance, dude.
Darth Maul
what I, a healthy
going on.
Have.
I don't have my selfie stick light. I don't have my makeup on, and I can just tell like there's this red tint on my face, and I'm getting some episode 1 like vibes, like I'm gonna bust out a dual lightsaber or something all of a sudden.
You might. We're gonna.
I feel good.
Yeah,
that speaks to how I'm feeling good. I ran 10 miles earlier. Yeah,
that's perfect. We're back. We're talking Clips.
Adam's here in his bathrobe. It's great.
I'm feeling good. I don't know why Will's
I'm
so
living
spicy.
my Big Lebowski life. F off, Will.
I don't know why Will's so spicy during this winning streak, but if this is what it takes for the Clippers to get hot,
kiss my top 5, Will. Kiss it.
I'll tell you what. We started giving out player of the game, and the 6-game losing streak stopped. Will's been really upset and spicy that you've been sick, and the winning streak has started. So I think something's happening here.
Yeah, the flu's coming Will's way next. That's what's happening.
Adam, yeah.
All right, let's talk this 5 games in a row against mostly good teams. Warriors, Nuggets, Jazz, Blazers, Kings. This matches the longest win streak of last year. But last year's 5-game win streak came in late January and had 2 wins against the Spurs in it. So this one feels the competition is a little more, it's justifiable to be excited about this. I guess kind of what have we enjoyed most from this? Adam, we'll give you the floor a bit. You haven't had your pod time in a while. What have you been most excited about from this 5-game winning streak? A lot of good stuff to choose from in the breakdown.
I yield my time to Rod.
Dude, if Rod would have popped out right there, that would have been fucking awesome. All right. He's down to come back. I will say, I want to say
is
one
he?
thing. I want to say one thing about the Rod
Sure, he's
thing.
not pushing enough product right now with the way he sold his book.
I think that's what I wanted to talk about. I do think it is so great that someone came on a Clippers podcast to promote their book and then proceeded to kind of just shit all over the Clippers. It's a bold marketing strategy.
See how it pans out.
We'll see how it pans out. Adam, other than the Rod episode, we couldn't get Jillian Zucker on, so people had to be mad at something else. What are you most excited about in this 5-game win streak?
I think it's the play of Kawhi Leonard, because ultimately this team ceiling is certainly attached to Kawhi being at the peak of his powers and being at his best when his best is required. And while it's early in the season, to help turn this tide, first it started with bringing Russ off the bench, but Kawhi had to get back to being the number one option. And the pecking order has been a little more clear recently if you just look at shot distribution. And it really came down to maybe that game against the Denver Nuggets that they lost against Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan, maybe some blessing in disguise, because Kawhi got up 26 shots. And since then, he has shot 62% from the field and 56% from three. He shot himself out of that slump against the Denver Nuggets in one of the most horrific games.
Oh, yeah.
In the 2-1-3 era that they ended up losing somehow. But Kawhi had 31, I think it was, but only on 26 shots. And ever since then, he has been in rhythm. He has been in a groove. He has looked like the guy that we saw for 3 months last season. But I'm going to say something else. I think Kawhi is moving better than he did those last 3 months of last season when he was shooting 47% from the outside. It doesn't mean he'll be shooting those same splits over that prolonged period of time. I don't know if we'll ever see that again in his career or anyone else's, for that matter, where he was shooting 53, 47, 90 splits for 3 months going into the playoff series against the Phoenix Suns. But the movement that we're seeing from him and the ability to play defense at this high of a level still, where that has been there for the most part this season. We kind of speculated whether or not it was taking something out of his legs on the offensive end. But now he's melded the two. He's playing just as good as ever offensively while playing elite defense. That rip away he had in the second half last night in the third quarter, where he didn't get the dunk, but he was fouled, went to the free throw line near the end of the third, I think it was. That was crazy octopus Kawhi Leonard type of defense, where he just takes the one-on-one challenge. This happened in the NBA Finals. I don't know if it was 14 or 13 against the Spurs-Miami matchup when they went back-to-back years against one another, and Miami won the first time, the Spurs won the second time. Kawhi was the MVP. There's this really strange play where I don't know if it was a pivotal point of the game, but Kawhi just locked up Dwayne Wade on the perimeter, bringing the ball up the court, and made him look like he was playing junior high basketball.
A baby.
Like Wade had no idea what he was in store for, with Kawhi just being everywhere and hounding him and eventually getting a steal. Dwayne Wade's one of the greatest players of all time, a top 5 shooting guard of all time, a great ball handler, and he looked completely baffled at what Kawhi Leonard was throwing at him. And that's what I saw a little bit of shades of last night with Kawhi, with a rip away against the Sacramento Kings. And by the way, I was watching all his body language in that second half. Clippers are up 30 plus. Kawhi wasn't letting up. He was letting his own teammates hear it when they had defensive lapses up 30. I think there's something to that. And it's this: Kawhi can sense that the pieces are there, that they have a talented enough squad to win the championship. He doesn't want to take any possessions off now. He wants to make sure they are locked in and focused for 48 minutes, no matter what the score is, and they build those championship habits and don't skip any steps like he talked about coming into this season. He was demanding out of his teammates. He got on Norm and Terrence Mann, who had some miscue defensively. But again, they were dominating the ball game. Kawhi's about to go out and not even play in the fourth quarter, and he still was playing with an edge to him. Like, hey, I don't care. I'm chasing perfection here. There are legacies on the line. We have a team this talented.
Yeah.
It is time to make it 5 wins in a row impressively over some really good competition, winning 10 of 13 now, and get this thing in order as we move along into the new year. And I think that was very inspiring from Kawhi, and just has to be encouraging for Clipper Nation to see that level of leadership from him this early in the season.
I like what you said about the legacy thing, because Kawhi is the one guy whose legacy isn't. I mean, I know it's in question by some people who don't fully understand what Kawhi's done in this league, but his career is the least in question of any of the other guys when it comes to championship stuff, because the whole rings argument. Like, I love that point you made, because now we're seeing it, like, he's kicking guys in the ass by example, which is the best way to see it be done. The game against, when he had 40, Will and I were talking about this on the pod, the first 2 buckets, after watching those go in, if you were a Clippers fan, you just kind of felt like, okay, yeah, this is it. Kawhi's going to get any single thing he wants. And we're seeing that on a consistent basis.
And those points weren't drawn up for him. Those weren't plays.
He's getting
he was
those
just
points.
free flowing and feeling
points.
it to get to those 41 points against Utah. A lot of that, Coach Lou said the other day that, hey, I wasn't drawing up plays for him. It was just in the rhythm of the offense. And that's what you're starting to see now, because they're gelling, because that starting unit has been so good next to one another.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there's a chip on Kawhi Leonard's shoulder a little bit. Not that he needs it. He's a top 75 player of all time, but I still think there's added motivation to win one as a Clipper. He knows what that would mean. When you don't go to the Los Angeles Lakers, who already had 17 titles at that time, and you come to the Clippers to do something for the first time ever, that is meaningful. That enhances your legacy so much more. To win a chip with the Clippers would do more for him, more for PG, more for all these guys than winning somewhere else. It's similar to those 2 championships LeBron won in Miami do not outweigh the one he won for the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016.
Yeah, he wouldn't he be the first guy to, like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, lead 2 different franchises to their first championship? Like, that would be
LeBron.
True.
You're right. LeBron, Miami had won in 06 without him. Yeah, you're right.
Like
Toronto and the Clippers.
And, like, at least not like be on the team, obviously. Like, I'm sure there's some guy who's like, I've actually been just on 7 teams for his championships in the 50s. But, like, to be the main guy. Will, what have you seen? First of all, Will, anything else you want to say about Kawhi Leonard? Any other adjectives you want to use to describe him? If not, what have you been most excited from the streak of play?
I mean, yeah, the Kawhi stuff is great. I think Adam succinctly wrapped it up. I don't have too much more to add. It has been, look, I think the thing that was the most concerning about this season, and certainly why I was down about it, was the availability of Kawhi and Paul George and the results that had yielded to that point thus far. And I think seeing that turn around is huge. And seeing Kawhi back at the height of his powers, I think, is especially important for a Clippers squad that doesn't have, and this is the cliche thing, but that doesn't have the vocal leaders, right? Like, there are guys, but I don't know that there's the one guy that's given that's given the halftime speech. You know, I don't know that there's the one player on the Clippers team that does that. But what Kawhi does, and what I think is in some ways better, in some ways, you know, it can be bad, but is lead by example on the floor. And like what he does sets the tone for everyone else. You see this guy who is, you know, I mean, at his best,
best player on the team.
Yeah. Well, and like at his best, a top 5 or top 3 player in the entire league.
Yeah.
And you see this guy, you know, doing everything that he can to gut out a win. You know, at this point in the regular season, I think that is infectious and carries across the board. So I mean, the intangibles, I think, are also interesting to monitor across the board for this team that has had issues with motivation, has had issues with effort. The thing that I have been really interested in, and I know that we've talked about it a little bit, I've talked about it with Adam, I've talked about it with Chuck, is Ivica Zubac playing some of the best basketball of his career.
Yeah.
I know in the controversial Rod episode, we talked a lot about bigs And I think that the streak
they're back.
I think the streak that Zoo is on right now has to be so encouraging. And to me, beyond the stats, which we could talk about, I know Adam's talked about, but to me, the most encouraging thing is we now see Ivica Zubac in closing lineups, which is something that has not really happened in the 2-1-3 era, certainly not before. And that, like him having that level of trust, because they both know that if they do need a bucket, there are ways that they can lean on Zoo to do said thing. And then for his defense, and especially like with the absence of wings, right, in the James Harden trade, and certainly some of the futility that we saw in small ball lineups before that trade, Zoo's like importance on the floor becomes doubly so, in my opinion. And for him to be at this level where Ty Lue has ultimate confidence in him closing out games, I think that is huge, just huge, that all 5 of your starters could actually be your closers, and certainly and like they fit well enough together, and they have the skill and are playing at a level that you have no problem with them closing. Makes it even better for someone like Ty, or a matchup where you can even improve upon said lineup. You can add more offense. You can tweak it a little bit when all of those pieces are working as they should, as constructed, which I really think is not something that we've necessarily seen in the 2-1-3 era. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't know that we've seen a starting lineup that's like, this is what I want starting, this is what I want closing. I have no problem. I see few weaknesses when this group is on the floor. And I mean, I'm not going to talk about two because I'm not going to overstate my time here, but Terrence Mann picking back up is great for that too. But Zoo for me has been massive.
I love the starting lineup comment, because we had a question like last week where someone was like, if our starting lineup is so good, how come Ty isn't closing the game with the starting lineup? And whatever you want to think, there's a lot of things that go into being a head coach. This isn't a comment on Ty Lue in any way, but now we're seeing it, and we're seeing it work closing games. And that point you made, Will, as you're talking about Zoo, I was having flashbacks to that first game against the Warriors that Zoo played, and he just got torched off the floor. That first playoff game when Doc was still here, and it was just like, oh, Zoo, you got a long way to go. He's made he doesn't do big jumps. He's made incremental, slow, up into the right stuff.
Atomic habits, if you will.
Yes. That has been so good for this Clippers team. And we know Adam Oslin, Carl Tart is a soldier in the army of Paul George. Adam Oslin has been commanding the Ivica Zubac brigade. You've been preaching the goodness of Zoo pretty regularly, Adam, and rightfully so.
Well, I went off actually after the Portland game just because Ivica Zubac had 14 points on 7 of 9 shooting in the first quarter.
Yes.
And he doesn't touch the ball. Well, he may have touched it, but he doesn't get a shot up for the next 13, 14 minutes. He's out there on the court till something like midway through the third quarter. And that to me is just a failure of recognizing a guy who's having a big night, who has played big, who has earned more touches. It almost feels like to me at times with Ivica Zubac, he gets left behind like he's still a rookie or something, like he is still that young in 2019.
He looks exactly the
with
same.
A deer in the headlights look on his face in game 1 against the Golden State Warriors. That's not the player he is anymore. He's grown from that completely.
That dunk on Sabonis, good Lord.
Oh, yeah.
But he typically dominates Sabonis. He dunked on him when he was with the Indiana Pacers. I don't know what else he has to do to earn those minutes late in games. Now,
it's consistency. I'm like, sorry to interject. It's 100% consistency. And this has been the issue with Zoo. And I think last year he was off to a great start. And it didn't carry through that way. Very different with the availability of 2-1-3, but it's always been about consistency for me with Zoo. And I feel like he's getting there now, which is the big change.
To me, though, offense can come and go, especially when you're a big man. You're dependent on getting the basketball and finding the touch and the rhythm. And we know Ivica Zubac doesn't have the greatest hands, and people get on for that, but he's looked really good in that area over the last couple of weeks with James Harden, and apparently they are working before practice, after practice, a ton on pick and roll stuff, and he hasn't dropped many lately. And I would just say this. I think the defense is consistently there from Ivica Zubac for the most part. And when you need a big body late in games, like I think they should have used him in Denver in that game where they're up 7 with 6 minutes left, and he doesn't get substantial minutes down the stretch. They end up losing. Well, the next time around, yeah, he was playing even better, I guess, but he wasn't bad in Denver either against Jokic. Yeah. And he didn't get minutes then, but this next time they beat Denver at full strength. Ivica Zubac is one of the stars down the stretch. Well, he got the opportunity and he made the most of it. I just think there are more opportunities like that for him, and he'll rise to the occasion if you give him the chance. That's all he needs. I think Big Zoo has been underutilized for years because every offseason it seems like they come in and say all the right things. Oh, we're going to get him more looks. We're going to run the offense a little bit more through him. The 21-22 season without Kawhi all year, with Paul George just playing 31 games, he had multiple games like that. Isn't that where he went toe-to-toe almost with Nikola Jokic and had his career high of 32 or whatever it was in a game? Yeah, they lost, but Big Zoo has overperformed many times, and it just gets forgotten about. And I don't know what it is. He keeps getting that treatment like he's still a young player in this league. And yes, he's 26, but it is time because there's another weapon out there that you can use that can help this team win games. Use it. When he's dominating like that against the Portland Trail Blazers, don't go away from it. Don't forget about him during the ball game. Go right back to it until they prove they can stop it.
Sorry, I think you're right. I think part of the reason that Zoo gets all the hate, which I think is so funny, is that I think it's because he's the biggest guy on the court. As we know, we talk about the Paul George quote all the time. Like, he's got to play like the biggest guy on the court. And sometimes people see his body language, and I think, you know, the people think about the 3 main guys he's starting around, which is James Harden, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. Anyone on court next to those 3 guys is going to look maybe not as prepared as, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not justifying, like, everyone's wrong who thinks that about Zoo. But I think put in the context of the guys he's had to play with, his body language, sometimes you're like, get it together, Zoo. Literally because he's the largest guy on the court. And he is, for whatever, he gets a horrible whistle. Even people who hate Zoo have to admit that the man does not get, like, he gets a worse, maybe not as worse as Paul George, because Paul George should get more free throws. But Zoo will get just that picture of Chris Paul just ripping his shirt off. Like, Zoo gets no love from the officials, and he tries to plead his case, but he's been phenomenal. I hope people who wanted to trade for Daniel Gafford realize how good Zubac has been for this team. And look at the starting lineup numbers with James Harden, who loves Zoo. I can't wait for James Harden to take Zoo to whatever strip club in Los Angeles James Harden is going to. I want Zoo to be there. You get pick and roll chemistry through, you know, team outings and things like that. I think Zoo even has a little higher to go, which kind of goes with James Harden being a little more selfish sometimes in a good way, that I'm looking forward to.
Just how many times?
I've never had a Gafford Stan account. I don't even know where he went to college. I honestly thought, did he go to college at Wofford only because his last name is Gafford and it sounds similar?
Arkansas.
Boo. Well, shout out Pat Bev. Anyway, sorry.
Chuck, I expect it from the fans at times to go body language with it or see a couple of plays that confirms that, oh, see, he doesn't have the hands because he dropped this, even though 99% of the stuff he does is great. Yes.
I want to say one thing about the hands sometimes. Russell, I had a friend who does not watch the Clippers very often. They had one of their TNT games or something like that, and he was watching the Clippers and he was texting me. And he said, how come Russell Westbrook runs into 3 defenders and then throws a 90-mile-an-hour fastball to Zubac right next to him? And I just want to say, sometimes there's some passes specifically from Russ that leave Zoo in a difficult position. You know what I mean? Like, he'll just be like, here you go. Boom! It's like a foot and a half away. And the same 3 defenders that were on Russ just rotate 15 degrees and are now guarding Zoo in that instance. So that's all I wanted to point out.
I just see Ivica Zubac as another path to winning games that opens up a different element to their offense because of how efficient he is at the basket. And what he's shooting something like 68% from, is it 5 feet to 9 feet out? So floaters are all dropping for him. That's an elite
Dream.
all-time type of number that not even Nikola Jokic touched last season. Obviously, he's doing it at a lower volume, but he's been incredible. You have these high percentage looks you can get from Ivica Zubac more often than not, and you're just going away from it for lower percentage shots sometimes. And I know the onus is on James Harden and 213 to be the guys that do the heavy lifting, and it needs to be that way. But when you see a flaw in a team like the Portland Trailblazers without Robert Williams, without DeAndre Ayton, and Zoo is crushing them and making himself look like a man amongst boys, I just don't know why you go away from that, because it also fuels your defense. That is one way to slow down up tempo when your center is constantly just dunking on teams and they have to take it out of bounds. Like, that slows down teams from getting into their sets faster. And it's the old Shaq line of, if you want the dog to protect the house, you got to feed him. Don't tell me it's just not human nature with Ivica Zubac and every other big man, where if he's feeling like he's more involved on offense, he's not going to give you a better defensive effort. It always happens that way.
Can I, since we've discovered the power of screen share here on Clips and Dip, I found Zoo's shot chart for the season, and then we're gonna talk more about how good this 5-game winning streak is in, because there's a lot of good stuff after this break. But really quick, I wanted to share Zoo's shooting chart from this year. Can we see it? Can someone confirm if we can see
Got it.
There we go. Look at Zubac's shooting chart. This is phenomenal. I think the funniest part is this little area right here. What's going on at the center of the nail to the right of the nail? There's some comfortability like right here that I don't know if there's something to lean on, but this is I don't know what you'd expected from a Zubac shot chart. It's pretty close, but like I kind of like this little area. He's shot, at the rim, he's at 65%, 3 to 10 feet, he's at 60%, 10 to less than 16 feet, he's at 66%. Like there's not much more Zoo could be doing right shooting wise offensively. He's not the best passer. He connects things for sure, which is why I think the hockey assist would really benefit a center like Zoo. You know what I mean? Like, Zoo's not going to make the assist out of the short roll, but he's going to make the assist to the assist out of the short roll kind of thing. Thank you. I am charted very much. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it'd be fun to show his shot chart. Like, there's something on the right side over here, kind of bleeding over. I may be wrong.
He's right-handed, so that's natural. You'd expect him to be more comfortable going right.
Well, come on. What are you
the jump shot.
I know he's not. Well, here's the other. He's not shooting with maybe he should shoot with his left hand going left. If we get ambidextrous Zoo, look out, everybody.
There's typically a pattern on the dominant side for a player like James Harden. He's always more comfortable driving left.
You're saying more ISOs for Zoo going to his right.
Well, if you can, yeah, they're going to try to take that away, but he's got a plethora of moves. He's got a bag. How many times do we see Ivica Zubac do something in the paint and go, oh, I didn't know he had that in him. There's just more game to him than I think we realized. One concerning thing on that chart was the home road field goal percentage splits.
Let me bring it back up. Let me bring the chart back up. We can do that now here on Clips and Dip.
Where he's shooting about 14% better at home than on the road. To Will's consistency point, at least on the offensive side, you see that road, he's at 56% from the floor. At home, he's at 69% from the field. That's a pretty big disparity and gap between the two.
That's pretty true.
Clipper Nation, give yourself some love. You're helping fuel Ivica Zubac, obviously, at home, but you want to see more consistency on the road there, too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. All right, we got to do a break, and then we're going to talk just more good stuff happening in this 5-game winning streak, as well as Paul George's injury, which I don't know our level. We haven't really talked about that all together, but we're going to get into it There's been some loud ads. Everyone who listened to the Rod episode complained about the episode and the ads, which is why we put in this disclaimer. We got ads coming up. They've been too loud for you. Go ahead and turn it down. We got ads coming up in 3, 2, 1. All right. We are back at Clips and Dip, talking good things from the 5-game winning streak. I want to put something in here. Terrence's shooting is coming around, which I love to see. If you take out the horrific game against the Warriors, where he was 1 for 5 from 3, he shot 41% from 3 over the last 4 games. Which, and Adam, I think you talked about this when we were on the show, or Will, you brought it up. He does not shoot very well for the Clippers to start the season, just throughout his Clippers career. It's just something.
Yeah, these are
according.
That was according to stats from Justin Russo, so I trust it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. We gave Justin Russo a lot of free pub last ep. Did not give us a shout out, but that's neither here nor there.
Rod.
Actually, also very true. If anyone bought Rod's book, let us know. Let us know if it improved your life or helped your rebounding skills. But I think Terrence is something to shout out. We've talked about Norm a fair amount. I did want to get Adam. Did you hear what Will came up with last episode?
The Powell Rangers.
Phenomenal.
Go Powell Rangers.
Phenomenal.
That is one of my favorite. Is that a Will original?
Yeah, original.
That's
off the top.
That's like the type of nickname.
No beat.
I used to call Goran Dragic the Dragic Zord.
Okay.
For the Green Ranger. Because some people called him the Dragon too. But that's the type of nickname. I don't know how he got that nickname. You're the Dragon who's born.
I might know how, but I won't say it on air.
Okay. Pause. But that nickname is so good for Norman Powell. It almost elevates the amount I want to see him on the court now in how many minutes. And he's been great this season. But now it's like, oh, Powell Rangers, let's go.
Let's
unite. Like, come on. This is fun.
Our Umbrella Corp 213 Hoops tagged Eric Bui, who made, if you're watching on YouTube, this fantastic background. And I think our Clippers or our Twitter profile pic too. We need the Powell Rangers graphic. The lineup of Norm Powell with Harden, PG, Kawhi, Zoo is absolutely insane. We've talked about that enough. This is kind of leading what I want to talk about. Ty. I think Ty Lue. People wanted to fire Ty Lue. People wanted to fire Ty Lue. And now we won 5 in a row. He is doing his best to get away from Westbrook and Harden sharing the floor. This kind of goes into some of the chemistry stuff we talk about. We're going to talk about PJ Tucker, I think, in this segment. But like, there's things that you have to do as a head coach that are sometimes detrimental to the team because you have to show that they don't work sometimes. And I think we might be in the latter stages of that with the Westbrook Harden pairing on the floor together. But I think anytime you have a 5-game win streak, you can't not give a little bit of a shout out to the coach. He's trusted Zoo. He's made these decisions. You know what I mean? Like, Ty is a large part of the reason why we're feeling this good right now. Because I think if we're gonna, because we did hate on him a little bit on this podcast, but we got to give the respect too, because it's been a good job from Ty. Well, okay, wait. If you're watching on YouTube, you've already seen Will's name. Will is saying Dan Craig 4PF for coach. Will, go ahead.
No, I'm just playing. Okay, all right. I have one criticism, and it's been a through line of the 2-1-3 era.
It fits? Because I will listen to that criticism. But
under Ty, and that is, I just don't get why he walks back some of the things that he says are like a priority or says or something that we're going to do. Most notably in this win streak, I thought we had a pretty clear intention and idea of what the backcourt would look like in terms of minutes with both Westbrook and Harden on the floor. And then apparently we do not anymore. And these are things that like, these aren't fans tweeting at him saying this. This is stuff that he has said. I'm sure Adam has the receipts somewhere in a shoebox underneath his bed.
Do you print them out? Do you print out tweets?
But
At Kinko,
that's my biggest criticism.
Poster boards.
That's my biggest criticism. And I'm not saying that he's not necessarily deserving of the shout out, but there is still some stuff.
Of course. Okay. All right.
There's still some things. There's some
I'll
things.
give him
okay.
No
Things.
It has
Westerberg. Look it up.
I know there's things, but he's been good.
There's always going to be things, though, no matter who the head coach is. There's always going to be a section of the fan base that is looking at all the numbers and saying, objectively, this isn't working, and it's still happening. And why is this happening? I don't know if you guys have noticed what's happening in Philly now. Marcus Morris is playing way more than Robert Covington, even though Rocco was playing really well for them.
What is up with Rocco's career at this point? That's now 2 teams where he's gone, and sorry to derail this, he's gone and played really, really fucking good for what those teams need, and then they're just like, why? Like,
we need shot creation. I don't understand it.
It makes no sense. Yeah.
No, it's a tough one to rationalize. So now this happened yesterday, and I thought it was interesting and of note.
Do you need a screen share? We can do that now.
A lineup. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty easy one, so it's not that complicated. You don't need the visual. But the lineup that was a +9 for the Clippers against the Sacramento Kings in 7 minutes and 8 seconds of on-court time was Russ next to Norm, next to Harden, next to Kobe Brown, next to Daniel Tice.
Well, Kobe was out
there. This was, I think, the first time that a Russ James Harden lineup out there had won their minutes in a significant way. And it happened last night against Sacramento. Now, I don't know all the portions and times of the game it happened at. Maybe the momentum was all with the Clippers, but they've been trying to find a way to get Russ and Harden out there together and to make it successful. And for the most part, the Clippers have been shooting under 40% when those two are on the court together, 25% from 3. It's not working. It doesn't seem like it's going to work, especially against high-end competition. It's just fundamentally flawed. 2 guys that are dependent on having the ball in their hands to bring out the best in them. But they went with it last night, 7 minutes of court time, and it was a +9 out there. So,
against the team though that was on the second night of a hard back-to-back that
so
was
were we
30. A hard back-to-back? We got the fucking Trailblazers, dude.
And barely beat them. And barely beat them.
Get real.
30 minutes.
That doesn't make him a good team. That doesn't make it a hard back-to-back. That's on you.
But I agree, it's on them.
Yeah.
But
still played 40 minutes close.
Yeah, I mean, Paul George played 41 minutes. Kawhi played, I think, 38, and James Harden 37 the night before.
I would have liked them to only play 25. That would have been great.
Yeah.
But
I think it was an even playing field yesterday against Sacramento. They played their stars less the night before against Brooklyn as they put them away earlier in the third. I give the Clippers a ton of credit for the way they came out last night. And it's been like this on the second game of back-to-backs. Against the Lakers was the first one. Against the Dallas Mavericks, when they held them to 88 points, that was the second night of a back-to-back. Last night, too, outside of the one where they were up in Sacramento and then Golden State got the victory in Sacramento, lost in Golden State the next night, they were still in that game. But outside of that, the Clippers have looked damn near fresh and not as tired and lethargic as I would have thought in any of the second nights on these back-to-backs so far this season.
Yeah, that's been a revelation, I would say. I've been shocked at how good they've looked. All right, Adam, we talked about this last time. You said that Joseph Rye Ward also texted this to you. Since we talked about this,
can't get rid of that guy.
Joseph Rye Ward predicted the Clippers will go 14-6 over 20 games, starting with the Jazz game. So far, we're at 3-0. So as good of a start as you could quite literally possibly have. Adam, do you think the Clippers are going 11-6 over their next 17 to fulfill former Clippers podcaster, great, some would say just former Clippers podcaster per Will last episode, of going 14-6 over this 20-game stretch?
I told him I thought it was possible, depending on health and the way they're gonna rearrange lineups and rotations, and if they play heavier minutes as they have been. And I do think it is a concern. And Coach Lou talked about this after the victory over the Portland Trailblazers, that they are playing the 2-1-3 guys a little too much this early in the season. And he said they don't want to run them into the ground, but they also want to win games. So there's that balance you have to strike. But I do want to caution people, because eventually those legs will catch up with you. Like, you can't have guys playing 38 minutes every night. You may think, oh, professional athletes, whatever, Adam. No. This is what happened to LeBron James and the Lakers last season, where all of a sudden every fourth quarter they couldn't get across the finish line because he was playing heavy minutes, and they take their toll, and it's not a video game. So what were you going to say?
I was going to say, Will brought this up last episode we did, kind of the rotation situation right now, because it feels like, so Paul George hurt his groin, questionable for tomorrow's game versus the Dubs. I don't think we're wildly concerned about the groin. He could have come in per Ty Lue back again versus the Kings, but it was like a 30-point game. We don't know. But Will, you brought this up, kind of how the short rotation, like, we might be playing with a little bit of fire here.
Yes. No, I mean, I've already said my thoughts on this, so I don't want to reiterate it too much. But the Clippers have found something that's working. That's why they're in a win streak. It's not debatable. The thing is it's a double-edged sword for me, because there are guys on this roster that, if you want to get wins, cannot play a lot of minutes. And that is just, man, that is a hard reality. There are guys that cannot be on the floor if you want to win minutes, even against a second unit, sometimes a third, in the case of a Denver game. But at the same time, like, you have to put time into what works. And I think something that's sort of interesting is, as much as we know about sports science, I do feel like there's a little bit lacking in terms of, like, what a cumulative sort of, I guess I'm going to say load. That's not the right word, but like a cumulative sort of exertion is, right? Because on one hand, you don't, obviously you don't want injuries. No, none of the 30 teams want that. We say that every single season. But we don't necessarily know what the correlation is between the amount of time and games that you're supposed to play with, the propensity for injury. And we see all the time, right? In the NFL, when a team has a bye week, sometimes it's not advantageous in the playoffs. And I think the same thing can happen in basketball. I think part of the reason that they've been able to turn things around so hard from a 6-game losing streak to now a 5-game winning streak has been the amount of minutes on the floor. And we know with the schedule, which sucks. It sucks for the Clippers, but it is a harsh reality that this is not a favorable schedule, that they don't have a lot of practice time. And so I'm kind of understanding at this point in the season why we're seeing these guys playing 38 minutes, why we're seeing them play bigger minutes. But what I'm hoping, my hope is that as we continue, we can see that sort of start to go down, especially if we have games like we had against the Kings, where the starters are able to put away something early. We can keep those minutes a little bit lower. And I think overall, that's, to me, the best of both worlds, right? Because you stay in rhythm. You continue to build this chemistry that you can't do just through practices. You need game reps, while hopefully keeping everybody fresh enough and healthy enough for the duration of the season. But in terms of like the short rotation, hopefully that those two things can coincide. But unless you have a lead like you had against the Kings, again, there are players on this roster that I don't know how you find minutes for.
It feels like Kobe Brown, not to push the agenda too hard, if Kobe Brown is playing well, that is very advantageous for the Clippers lineup. We know Daniel Tice is going to get minutes. We know Norm's going to get minutes. We know Russ is going to get minutes. There's your 8-man rotation. If Kobe Brown can fill in 16 to 20 minutes of productive basketball, there's your 9 guys. And I think everyone's much more comfortable with a 9-man rotation over an 8 with the squad. Yes, I am a Kobe Brown noser. Second time we've used this name. I will take it every time. But I think that because PJ Tucker, who we're going to talk about his trade value next segment, has been bad, Kobe Brown weirdly can really help this roster stretch some of these minutes.
I think it's an interesting conversation and one that needs to be had, and I'm sure is within the Clippers organization, the front office, the coaching staff. Coach Lou alluded to that. They're aware they don't want to run these guys into the ground. I remember back to the Mike D'Antoni year with Dwight Howard with the Lakers, and a lot of people blamed D'Antoni, Lakers fans, for Kobe tearing his Achilles because they got off to that slow start and then they had to catch up just to get in the playoff picture, which they eventually did and got swept by the San Antonio Spurs. But
Sure.
the last 40 games of the season, I think they went something like 28-12. And Kobe was playing 41 minutes a night. And he was doing a lot more too because they had him, and it was some of the best basketball I thought he ever played because he was playing within the system with Mike D'Antoni, and he was being more of a distributor and making guys around him better and stuff. But it took its toll, and people speculate whether or not that Achilles injury was an accumulation of minutes and not just one bad movement. But nobody can really know these things. Sure. Because it's not like with Aaron Rodgers this season. The reason he tore his Achilles is because they were 10 games in. And over time, the wear and tear led to a full, complete Achilles tear. It was the third player or whatever of the game. So you never know with these things. But, you know, common knowledge, colloquial knowledge or whatever would tell you that you just don't want to press the gas pedal down too hard early in the season and have them running in the red too much because eventually you could hit the wall. And so you got to strike that balance, like I said earlier, of winning games, but also not chasing them to the extent this early in the season where you'll be losing games later on because you won't have these players available. And we don't know if Paul George playing those heavy minutes like he has been, near 40 minutes per game the first, couple months of the season. Not quite. He's probably 37 or something like that. If that led to the sore left groin or if it was just a tweak, it was just one bad movement. But the good news is that he could have played the second half if they weren't leading by 22 at the half over the Sacramento Kings. If that was a playoff game or a must-win type of situation towards the end of the regular season, he would have been there.
Yeah, the Paul George minutes load, I'm just going to read it back from the last handful of games. 41, 37, 38, 38, 37, 40, 36, 36, 38. Lot of basketball from those guys.
But it's to cover, Chuck, and I want to make this point, because they haven't figured out the most optimum lineups without those guys yet.
Right.
So if you're going to get by in the regular season and win some of these games without them, you still have to discover who works well with who in the second unit, and third unit stuff.
We love the Power Rangers, but that still has Kawhi and PG out there.
Yeah. So the starters are covering, the stars are covering for a lot. And that's their job. But it is something worth monitoring early in the season that they're having to do it this much to this extent because a lot of these other lineups are coming up with a negative number that they throw out there.
But like I was saying, don't you think that the pendulum could eventually swing the other way as things continue to click? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe this is an early investment that can later, hopefully, it can pay dividends.
It has to be, right? Eventually, they have to find those other lineups to buoy the stars, and it goes back the other way where they're only playing 33 minutes for a couple of weeks, And that's because, well, we found these other lineups that can win games for us and rotations that work now as we've gotten more time together and we've gotten more evidence.
One person who's not working in any of the lineups that they play in is PJ Tucker, and he wants more playing time per PJ Tucker. The second time we have heard him talk about this to a publication. Apparently, other contenders are monitoring his situation, which, hey, to the Western Conference contenders monitoring it Send us whatever you want. If I were GM, I would trade him for, I don't know, bring in and out. Like, what is PJ Tucker's trade value right now? And should the Clippers just take whatever deal they can get? I don't know.
I honestly don't know how to gauge someone like PJ Tucker because he's such a unique player to start with, even in his prime. And now he's 38.
Yeah,
he's
let's
the
talk
second
now.
oldest player in the league. And it seems like he's having trouble coming to grips with that, talking about, and we talked about the OC Register article from a month and a half ago. And that was a little bit of a red flag at the time because he said, I have to make the biggest adjustment because I'm used to playing 30 minutes a night.
Yeah, him.
And that's what happens with stars as they age out, or if they're just not in that same situation. Look at Russ and the way he's handled himself and not playing big minutes right now. There's a guy on the roster that is showing the blueprint on how to adjust as you age, hopefully gracefully. But
as a young guy, look at Bones. Look at Bones handling a situation well, right?
Who has showed a ton of promise in preseason, early games in the regular season, and he hasn't made a stink at all. He's sitting there celebrating other guys playing well. I don't know if PJ Tucker, because of when he started turning down shots and not even taking them anymore from the corner, that's where it gets to a point where is he really playable? I would like him to see minutes here and there, depending on the matchup, like against Jokic, against Zion, but we're talking 5 to 10 minutes, even in those games, where I think he can just be a disruptor. You throw a wrench in the gears where they just don't see this defender coming, and you don't need his offense for that stretch because you put him out there with the right lineup that has plenty of firepower, and all he does is throw a guy out of rhythm. Because I think his defense is still pretty good. So that's why I don't know exactly where his value's at. Will, what do you think?
Well, I with the defensive thing, I agree with you. I just feel like it's been up and down, and I think a thing that we see with players across the board is when they're not happy with their role, you don't see the same level of effort and commitment on that side of the floor. And I got to be honest, there, PJ, we knew that he was going to have his offensive limitations coming in, but they were compounded by a hesitancy to take shots. And unfortunately for him, it came at a time where the team was losing a lot of games, and there was a lot of hesitancy to take open shots. And due to reworking the team around the fit with James Harden. So he is a little bit of a victim of circumstance for sure. But for me, like, I just don't get what your end goal is by releasing statements like this. And, I'm not, I don't cape for the owners in any scenario or any way, but like, if your goal is to get traded, is displaying yourself as a malcontent the best way to get traded? And if your goal is more minutes on this team, is airing dirty laundry about the team that you're currently on, your path to get more minutes? I don't really get the intention. And to me, what we've seen through these two things tells me, and not to put too fine of a point on it, but that tells me everything that I need to know about PJ Tucker and where he belongs in this rotation. And to me, that means he's best on the bench.
Well, let's not forget when Coach Lue made the decision after 5 straight losses with James Harden next to Russell Westbrook in the backcourt to put in Terrence Mann for Russ in the starting lineup. He said he thought about PJ Tucker or Terrence Mann. One of those two.
We've talked about the wildest of possible scenarios on this podcast. So.
But I don't think he's alone in the coaching world of being someone that just favors a defensive stopper who brings toughness and attitude, and it feels like it's a culture builder type of guy, that it'll get your team to come out and play aggressively defensively because you have PJ Tucker out there. So I wouldn't be shocked if a contender or somebody else is poking around and kicking the tires and wondering his availability and how they can get him. But when Daniel Tice was brought up and playing this well for the Clippers, or brought in, And then he was out in that game against the Utah Jazz, and PJ Tucker still didn't get minutes, and Ivica Zubac instead played 42. That was telling.
Yeah, and Kobe Brown's minutes. Kobe Brown has taken PJ Tucker's minutes, and the Clippers are not losing. And like, I know it's not that simple, but it's one of the things that has helped this team. If you're a PJ Tucker stan, we'd love to have you on the pod. Love to talk where your head's at.
Not
Adam
really.
hates the idea. Adam hates the idea already. Coming up, we are going to talk a little bit about Clippers versus Warriors. We're going to talk about. We're going to remind everyone that we're kind of doing this charity thing with the give them a quarter thing. But coming up, we're talking Clippers versus Warriors. If the ads have been too loud for you, go ahead and turn it down. We got ads coming up, and then game talk in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back in. Clips and Dip. I'm Adam Oslin. Last night, a little double dip with myself and I think it was Will Updike, right?
A very little double dip.
It was
abbreviated. I got cut off at like the 6-minute mark. He was like, "Get the hell off my get off my radio."
They were kicking me off at 11. Radio. I was up against the clock, Will. I'm sorry. It was time crisis. and I no longer had the gun. Clippers, though, have won 5 straight. That's the current longest winning streak in the NBA at the moment, by the way, guys. They've won 10 of 13. And I would like to say this to a few different people. And I'm not going to call them out by name. I thought about doing a whole big receipt thing in my triumphant return to the podcast today and really getting into the nitty gritty here. Thank
you so much for not doing that.
You're right. That's what we have to worry about, not Rod coming on here and just essing on a team for an hour.
He's got to promote his book.
Yeah, it's great. Great way to do it. There are a lot of people who are all high and mighty when the Clippers had lost 6 in a row, when they had lost 5 straight with James Harden. And Will and I talked about this a little bit last night, but I'm not hearing the same energy now that they've won 5 straight and have won 10 of 13 and look like they have a real viable system offensively that's not just your turn, my turn, Kawhi and PG. And, I don't know, when people say, look at Russ, he's sacrificing minutes. You're telling me James Harden hasn't sacrificed shots? He only took 9 last night. Chuck, how many shots has he taken so far as a Clipper? What's his average shot attempt? 11 per game? How many shots does he average per game? It is significantly lower than it's ever been in his entire career. And some people aren't coming to grips with the fact that, maybe James Harden
10.3.
There you go. Isn't playing the same way that he has in the past, and maybe he is doing what he said he was going to do, and maybe that a system comment was blown out of proportion. I'm still waiting for a lot of people to say, you know what, he proved me wrong. That's fine. Isn't that what you want as a Clipper fan? For him to prove you wrong? Tell me this team and this starting lineup doesn't look amazing out there with their 120 offensive rating and 105 defensive rating. Tell me that when they're shooting 52% with that starting 5 on the floor and over 40% from the outside, that doesn't have something to do with James Harden and not playing ISO ball all the time, like a lot of people stereotype him as just an ISO dribbler. And instead, he's getting guys easy looks. He's bringing the best out of Big Zoo. That's not a coincidence that Ivica Zubac is playing some of the best basketball of his career right now, the last 13 games with this new starting lineup. It's James. Kawhi Leonard catching fire like this and talking about post-game how he has more energy defensively because he doesn't have to do as much on the offensive end, and him shooting 62% from the field the last 6 games. I think we need to start giving James Harden some credit. I know it's just winning 10 of 13. But if you can't see the vision and why they brought him in and why it would make sense to bring him in next to 2-1-3, I don't know what to tell you at this point.
11-6 over the next 17, and then people will believe. Then we'll be at the JRW 14-6 record. I agree with everything you said.
A lot of people are still going to be like, wait till the playoffs. I'm going to end up being right. I'm playing the long game. You guys don't know. I don't have to apologize for anything yet. I'm sorry, but it's working. the way they constructed this, bringing Russ off the bench, who looks happy. Does he look like a guy who's upset? Russ stands. Stand down. Stand
We're
down.
gonna boycott watching the Clippers.
Support
Did you not see
Russell
that?
Westbrook. He is playing well in this role off the bench. I heard the chants last night, we want Russ late in the fourth quarter. They wanted him back out there. He acknowledged the crowd. He pointed to them. He's got a big smile on his face. Russell Westbrook looks like somebody who wanted to sacrifice for the betterment of the team, and it's working, and he's happy. They're winning. So support Russ in that decision. That's what I would say.
I love it. I love this energy. Do you think we're going to see who's going to be more valuable in this game against the Warriors, Harden or Russ? The Warriors without Draymond Green, who's suspended indefinitely for.
Talk about clowns.
I'll tell you what, I thought it should have been a foul on Nurk. Back in my day, that's a foul on Nurk.
Is Rod in the room with us right now?
Are we? How much does this affect Clippers versus Warriors? He's been over the last 5 games, 4 of their most played lineups involved Draymond Green. How are we feeling? Is this a trap game now that Draymond's out?
I don't know. Is PG playing? He's questionable, right?
Do you want him? Oh, here's the question. Will, do you want PG to play?
Yep.
Trust your guys.
Yeah, I mean, why not? No, I want him to play. Wait, should he play? I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Okay, sure. All right. Adam, what are your thoughts? Should he take the rest off? It's a 5, what is it? 5 and 7 or it's a 4 and 6 or some shitty thing?
Just depends on how bad it is, the severity of the injury, and how bad you want to win this game, and how bad you think you need him. With the way Kawhi is playing right now, and having James Harden in the fold, they're talented enough to win over this struggling Golden State Warriors team without Paul George. They are, especially because Draymond Green, and I don't like him, obviously, especially over the last couple of years. It's just he's turning into a caricature of what people thought of him. Things usually don't end pretty with dynasties and teams like this, and it seems like it's starting to unravel a little bit for the Golden State Warriors, but he's been their heart and soul. There is a foundation when he's out there on the court. There's a reason why they won 4 championships. There's a reason he and Steph Curry work so well together. And even though his meager stats, they just don't account for the impact on winning that Draymond Green has displayed with this Golden State Warriors team. So that's a big loss for them. So if you want to say both teams are without pretty substantial players, I still think the Clippers by far the more talented group, and they played Steph Curry pretty well the last 2 times this season against Golden State. If they get up for that game, regardless of if Paul George is available, I feel pretty good about their chances.
And last game, Draymond went 4 for 8 from 3, which he had like 20. It was absolutely insane.
It was gross.
It
was frustrating. Like, come on. He makes 1 3 a game and he's already got 4 threes made in the first quarter.
Yeah. Will, what's a major thing you're looking for from the Clips in this game to make you feel good about it? Because they don't play until Knicks on Saturday after this game.
I mean, really just more of the same. I want to continue to see some consistency from Zoo as well as continuity from all the guys. If Paul George is unable to go, or, they just ideally out of an abundance of caution, he doesn't end up going in this one. I'd really like to see what that looks like. Does that insert Norm into the starting lineup? I'm curious to see what that looks like, but I think throughout the trials and tribulations of a regular season, we've had an overwhelming abundance of health and been super lucky so far. But every championship team, for the most part, is going to have to go through spots this season missing some of their best talent. And to see how the Clippers, who are currently on this heater, are able to respond to that, I think is going to say a lot about where this team is and longevity-wise, where this team is. Even playing a team that is down a substantial, there's no way to underwrite it, a very substantial part of what makes the Warriors good.
And it's hard to take down a team 3 times within the span of 2 weeks, since they've been playing Golden State a lot recently. But there's a path to do so. You mentioned Ivica Zubac. The game with the 22-point comeback and the Paul George game winner over Klay Thompson against the Golden State Warriors, Big Zoo was 6 of 6 from the field. And he didn't play a possession in the fourth quarter of that one. Ended up being the right move. Daniel Tice was great.
Yeah.
They went small. Coach Lou pushed all the right buttons. But I'm telling you, even more so without Draymond Green, there is an advantage there. Going against Looney or Dario Saric, I want to see Zoo get to finish what he started in that game when he was 6 of 6 from the field. I want to see them exploit Ivica Zubac as much as possible against this smaller Golden State Warriors team and not make it as difficult as it has to be get a victory. Take the path of least resistance.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for
easy buckets would be nice.
Easy buckets and defensive integrity to start this game. Just let's play like we haven't won 5 in a row. You know what I mean? Like let's set the tone at the point of attack. I hope Ty Lue's careful with the Westbrook Harden minutes. I'm not sure when those are going to be done, but if this game starts, if the starters start off their usual, what are they? Plus 10.3 in the minutes they've all shared together now. Like if we start at that plus 10 rate, I feel really good about this team because it means the defense is doing a lot of good work. And without Paul George, that could be a taller order, Will, like you talked about. But that will show us. I don't know if they'll start Norm if Paul George can't go, just because that defense is a little, I don't know. It is the Warriors, which is always a pain in the ass. But hey, I'm looking forward to it.
That defense wrecked Sacramento yesterday. I don't give a damn that they were coming on a back-to-back. They had just set a franchise record of made three-pointers in a game where they hit 25 against Brooklyn the day before, and then they end up shooting 25% from three against the Clippers the very next night. And De'Aaron Fox never got it going. Sabonis never got it going. Monk, to hold Sacramento to 99 points, that was one of the better defensive efforts we've seen in the 2-1-3 era, considering I thought there were going to be tired legs. I thought it was a missed opportunity to put Portland away to save legs for Sacramento. It didn't matter. They looked great out there.
It was looking good. Okay, now the most important part. Player of the game picks. Adam Osland, your player of the game for Clippers versus Warriors.
I'm piggybacking off myself of what I just said with Big Zoo. I'm going with Big Zoo. He's been averaging
needy double-double. We talking like 15 and 13 or something?
He's been averaging 14 and I think 11 over like the last 10 games now. So I don't know. I'm going to say 20 and 13 from Big Zoo in the game. That's where I'm going with it.
All right. Will, player of the game, Clippers Warriors. Got Adam with 20 and 13 from Big Zoo.
I'm going to go with Harden, and I think that this, if Paul George doesn't go, we're going to need to see him doubly aggressive offensively. And he's had quite a few great games throughout this stretch, but I think that this one could be a standout for him, both as a facilitator and as a scorer. And I have said that before and gotten burned, but I'm feeling good about this one. If they do have to grind out a win without Paul George, he is one of those guys who's going to have to step up in a big way. And I think what we saw with him aggression-wise against Sacramento, the second night of a back-to-back, might I add, bodes very well.
I'm going, and I don't think any of us have ever picked this player before. I'm going Russ. No, I did pick him once. I'm going Russ. I think Russ steps up in this game. I think we get good Russ. I don't know if that means 25 minutes, whatever. I think we get a good Russ game. I think it helps us win in a game that's maybe a little too close than we want it to be. But I'm picking Russ on this one.
I think part of the reason that they were trying out Russ and Harden in that game where they were up by 30 in last night against the Kings was because they saw the Golden State Warriors on the schedule, and we have a chance to play smaller against this team. Ooh. And we're going to see it again. And maybe Coach Lou will find it. He'll find the right lineup where Russ and Harden can play together, because if you can figure that out, that would be huge for unlocking a second unit that just brings more stability to this team when starters are down or not playing heavier minutes, as we've mentioned earlier, or out like Paul George may be.
Yeah, that's a good comment. We'll be back with a double dip tomorrow over on AM 570. Tripod on Sunday, something like that. We're going to get it figured out. We're also going to think of a charity. If you've thought of a charity, comment on YouTube, youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast that we should donate our Give No Quarter funds to. We're looking at pretty penny so far. We're up to like, I think $9 between the three of us. We're barely even quarter three through the season. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Will, where can these people listen to this podcast?
So you can listen to the audio version of this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on Deezer, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on Amazon Music. But if you want the full experience of Clips and Dick, the real thing, you got to go over to YouTube. That's @Clippers Podcast. Please give a like and subscribe. We'd really, really appreciate it. And as always, if you want to chop it up with us, we're over on Twitter. That's @ClippersPod, not Clippers Podcast like the YouTube, which you should be liking and subscribing to. And you can reach us over there.
Adam giving the thumbs down. That's not a good way to kick this over. Adam, we're so happy to have you back. The tripod is fully back. We went a little longer than usual, but that's what happens. Can we get up some positive words before we send these Clippers fans out for an episode that's really supposed to be listened to over maybe a couple of days?
As much as I like just receipt poaching, I love all you guys. Russ stands as well. Stand up for your guy. Maybe stand down a little bit with some of the rhetoric, because he is enjoying what the Clippers are doing right now and the role he is playing. He's thriving in it. And I agree with Chuck. He could be big tomorrow. I like the winning plays he is making. He went from, I think at times, having more of those empty stats to now having less stats that are more impactful to winning. Don't worry about his numbers. Worry about the efficiency out there, getting to the basket. He turned down a three-pointer in that game last night in the corner and just took his man to the block and put it up over him. Russ just bodying guys. I love seeing that. And him turning into this fan favorite, 6-man off the bench. This is the story arc I want to see for Russell Westbrook. To win a championship with this team playing this role, it can all happen. And just, as Will was bringing up, or I think Chuck was earlier about Coach Lue, got to give him credit for pushing a lot of the right buttons right now. And this Clippers team is finding themselves. They are. It's coming together. Keep it going. Starts with the defensive end.
Up and to the right, which I guess if you're watching is this way. Thank you for the positive words, Adam. Thank you to everyone listening. We're back. The Clippers might win every game from here on out. Who knows? That would be pretty cool. We'll be back with a double dip tomorrow. Full tripod on Sunday. And as always, let's go Clips.
And don't let Rod win.